You are about to become a master storyteller. I don't think I've ever been so excited and nervous to record a video, so let's not jibber jabber anymore and let's just get straight into it. This is my promise to you throughout this full guide. Let me just cover my fat face with another fat face. After this full guide, you will know exactly how to become an expert storyteller, which means you will be able to captivate anyone in front of you. You'll be able to win the hearts of those you want to impress, and you'll give everyone you tell your story to the feeling they can relate to you. Let me uncover my fat face with another fat face. Why have I included this photo here on the right of me? This isn't just some egotistical flex to show my pre-spaghetti smile. There is a reason why I've included this photo. This photo was taken around 4 months ago, so December of 2023, and 3 months prior to me sat down at this table where I was in Tenerife. I was with 15 other people who I'd never really met before, and we had met in a hostel and we were sat there having this lovely meal. 3 months prior to this, I was really getting my channel underway with the storytelling aspects in my videos, and I was learning everything that I possibly could about storytelling. But it wasn't until this experience where I had 8 people sat in front of me and I had 5 to 10 minutes throughout the dinner where I decided to tell them one of my favourite stories, which is very personal to me, that I saw the look on their faces and the expressions of them being taken on a journey with my words. And I saw that as soon as I stopped talking and I revealed what my story was and the ending, that I could see after me talking I had built a bridge between me and them, and they felt better connected with me. So that's why I've included that photo, because I want to explain to you in this full guide how you can win the hearts of whoever you are speaking to and who is in front of you with storytelling. Let me put it this way: do you want more charisma? Do you want to make friends? Do you want to be liked? Are you an aspiring YouTuber? Do you have an idea that you want to pitch to someone in a business context? It doesn't matter what you want to do in life. If you are a human being, you need to be able to tell a story. Right, the structure of this course, or full guide let's call it, because I was going to release it as a course, is going to be 2 things in particular. Number 1, we're going to cover all the aspects of telling a great story, and number 2, we're going to finish by dissecting a killer story from a professional together, so we can outline all of the techniques that I'm going to take you through today, and we can see them used in action within a 5 to 6 minute story. Everything I'm going to be teaching you about is everything I've learned from my mentor of storytelling, Matthew Dix, who wrote a brilliant book called Storyworthy, which you may or may not have read. Doesn't matter if you haven't. In more particular order, what we're going to go through with the structure of today is why tell a good story, the 5-second moment, how to begin a story, misdirect, so when you reach the middle of your story, what the bloody hell to do there, using the techniques of backpacks, crystal balls and camouflage bombs, how to end your story, humour and when to use it, because a lot of people get confused with how to actually be funny. There's a method to the madness. Bonus tips on how to take your story from good to great, the cardinal sins of storytelling, which is going to be, don't know why I'm banging my chest, my favourite thing to go through, because they are really things that annoy me when I see people telling a story, which prevents them from taking an average story to absolutely excellent. Low stakes ways of improving your storytelling, telling a story in public, everything that you'll need to know in order to smash it on stage. Finale, like I said, we're going to be breaking down a killer story together. Grab your pen, grab your notepad, get ready to take some killer notes. Let's go. Right, why tell a story? Great question. Why tell a story is because a story is a journey. And a story is the key to people's hearts and to letting them know they're not alone. As you can see from this quote down below from Matthew Dix on the right there, that's from his YouTube channel, telling stories about your life lets people know they are not alone. If you want to relate to people and vice versa, you need to do so through storytelling in whatever context you are trying to relate to people. There's another brilliant quote here from Matthew Dix. As people's gazes continue to fall to their screens and communication is truncated into bite-sized text messages, the human beings who can still hold the attention of an audience and teach and speak in an entertaining way possess enormous power. A lot of you guys have been requesting me to make this full guide, so this is one of the reasons why I've made it, because a lot of people in the comments say, Lewis, how do I improve my speaking skills? How do I improve my communication skills? Storytelling is at the heart of it. Now, before I click the next slide, This might be the first video you've ever seen from me, so you might be wondering, who the bloody hell am I? All you know at this point in time is I'm a YouTuber with a bald head and a bookshelf. If you do know me, however, I'm going to make an assumption, and I'm going to make an assumption that you are a loyal subscriber because of one thing. In one video or another that I've uploaded, you've been able to resonate with what I've said, and you've been able to connect with me as a person through my stories. Because when I think about the other influencers who I resonate with them because I see a reflection of myself in them through the stories that they've told, not necessarily through the information that they throw at me. The two videos which I've screenshotted and shown as examples on the right here. One was titled The Dangerous Rise of Serious Young Men. That was one of my most popular videos, and my favourite video I've ever recorded, You Are One Conversation Away from a Completely Different Life. Both videos included storytelling. If you go back through all of my popular videos and you took the storytelling aspect out of those videos, one thing would be apparent. The audience wouldn't have had an opportunity to connect with me as a person. It would have just been some random person on the internet throwing information and knowledge at them in the hopes that that knowledge would stick in their brains. It's by means of a story that people connect with people. If you're a salesman, you need to connect with people. If you're a parent, you need to connect with your children. If you're a friend, you need to connect with your fellow chums, let's call them. And if you're on a first date, you need to let the person sat in front of you, be it woman, man, that they can confide in you through the vulnerability of a story. Let's go. People relate to people. I've included this meme here from Will Smith, sat there very sophisticatedly, to illustrate one thing. There have been and there will be continuous moments throughout your life where you will meet people for the first time. And because first impressions are so important, if you are a master at storytelling, you can win the hearts of other people like that through your stories, and you can bypass the process of potentially having negative first impressions with people. I remember multiple times of meeting my ex-girlfriend's family, and if I would have known how to tell a story, then that would have been the best way to ward off any thoughts in their minds of, who is this random person coming into my daughter's house trying to woo her. I would have let them know that I'm safe. You can connect with me because I've just told you a story, and I'm willingly expressed vulnerability. In a more archaic sense, an evolutionary lens, let's call it, of times of old, we would have gathered around the fire, and the village shaman or elder would have told a story to relay some wisdom from the past, and we would have connected with that story around a fire. A story is a very sacred thing that we hold dear. In fact, just a quick side note, even when you look at how we form memory in the brain, narrative and story is one of the best ways to do it. If you tell someone a story, they will remember what you say. People are busy, but if you tell them a story, they'll listen. In the US, the equivalent of a British TV show, Dragon's Den, is called Shark Tank, I think. And every Thursday it's on. Not when it's not aired on show, but every Thursday, me and my mum sit down and we have something we call business night, where we watch Dragon's Den and The Apprentice straight after. Now, if you don't know what Dragon's Den or Shark Tank is, essentially it is a TV show where you have 5 to 6 high-flying multi-millionaire CEOs who sit there and they are looking for opportunities to invest in people who come in, complete strangers, and pitch ideas for their business. Now, within the 1 hour segment in which this show is aired on TV, we can notice something very particular. The people who get the investment of these very busy, high-flying, multi-millionaire CEOs are the people who tell a story. You can have the best idea in the world, but if you don't know how to convince the person you're stood in front of to invest in you as a person, you won't win their hearts. There are numerous times, so many examples on this show, where the people will have a terrible idea, but because they have told a compelling story, one of the investors will invest in the person pitching the idea as a person. They'll say, your idea is crap and it has not a lot of potential, but I really like you as a person, so I'm going to invest in you and we'll figure out the idea as we go along. People are busy, but tell them a story and they'll listen. Oh, skip too far. Number 1, the 5-second moment. Strap in, strap on. I'm about to ruin every single book and film for you, using Jurassic Park as an example. A story must show a flow of change. You are different now compared to the beginning of your story. To show a framework here, before the story you were one version of yourself, after the story you are another, new, revived version of yourself. For the better or for the worse, we're going to get into in a second. Change is at the heart of storytelling. I'm not crying, I've just got hay fever. Your 5-second moment is the point of change. If you whittled down most stories to the highlight of the story, it would only involve 5 seconds, because it would encapsulate a sentence such as, I thought this, but now I think this. I felt this, but now I feel this. Your story doesn't explicitly have to say your 5-second moment in this language, but it has to encapsulate this theme in one way or another, which is the theme of change. Again, you must start your story as one version of yourself and end as another. You could stop the video now, and having learned just this point, you would tell better stories than most people if you incorporate this element of change. Right. One thing to note, which is a difference between a written story and a spoken oral story, is that they are both different in the sense of a written story is static and it is like a swimming pool. For example, a book or a article. A spoken story, where you're sat across a table from someone, or you're sat one-to-one with them, or in a group, is much more like a river, in the sense that if there's any lack of attention in your audience and they drift off in their mind while you're telling the story, when they return to your story, the listener will be behind and be lost, and their state of orientation in the story will go haywire, which shows that your story needs to be enticing in order for people to not get lost in what you're saying. Remember, you're taking them on a journey of change through something that happened in your life that they will hopefully be able to resonate with, and if you don't direct them with making your story enticing enough for them to listen and stay engaged throughout the duration in which you're telling it, they'll switch off, and when they switch back in, your story will be completely useless, because they won't be able to match where they were with the gap they lost and where you're at in the story. No one likes to go back and repeat a story just to fill in information. Most films and books will take on this structure in particular. Maybe you've seen a framework like this before. Again, we can see the sentences of the 5-second moment being captured here. I used to be, fill in the blank, until one day this happened. That's when I learned that, this. You have the victim, which is obviously usually shown at the beginning of the story, the victim's backstory. The 5-second moment happens for the victim. I'm thinking about the film The Joker, actually. The Joker is a brilliant representation of this. Decision is made. He can either become a villain or transform into the hero. Now, most optimistic films, unlike The Joker, is where the character will become the hero and, again, enact that state of change. To give you an example, perhaps you have, perhaps you haven't seen the film Jurassic Park. Even if you haven't, you probably think it's a film just about dinosaurs. But it's not. The 5-second moment in this film is key. At the beginning of the film, this main character, whose name eludes me, I can't remember, hates children. As you can see with this little scene, he's scouring with this little grump of a kid who's really annoying. But later on in the film, spoiler alert, he has a realisation within the space of 5 seconds where he protects these 2 children from a velociraptor attack, and he realises he's just almost sacrificed his life to save these children. He doesn't hate children after all, and he actually really likes them. Sounds simplistic, I know, but when you look at the film Jurassic Park and you consider what stakes are involved to add risk and danger and excitement to the story, the dinosaurs are just a mirage. They're just something that happens around the 5-second moment, which is him hating children and then realising, I don't hate children too much. Stakes are non-negotiable in a story, and the way I would translate these into synonyms is stakes are the elements of risk, danger, potential seriousness that you include in your story, and in a second we're going to get into more ways for me to highlight this to make it more understandable for you. Speaking of which, there's a beautiful mug on the screen. Double. In a story I told where the title was The Confidence Hack You Don't Hear, it received a lot of good comments where people were really resonating with the story. I uploaded this probably a week ago. This was 8 months after I've been really dissecting everything from storytelling onto my YouTube channel, so I feel like I've got a lot better at it. The stakes in the story were me stood at the front of a huge queue trying to order in Polish alone. Just to give you a brief outline of the story, I won't tell the story, but in 2020 I used to live in Poland, and it was during coronavirus, and I was learning some Polish by myself in my room. I was in a relationship with a Polish woman at that time, and One day we decided to go to a food market and I was like, right, I'm going to order in Polish. I felt very, very nervous. Long story short, which by the way, when we get into the cardinal sins of storytelling, never say long story short, but I'm doing this to exemplify something. We walked around the market, I went to order in Polish, I stood in front of the woman, completely forgot my words, turned around to see if my ex-girlfriend could help me because she was Polish. She was nowhere to be seen, and worse yet, I saw a queue of people lining up behind me who were listening to me, all confused, looking at what the hell I was saying, trying to decipher what this random foreigner is trying to order in Polish. So the stakes were the social anxiety aspect of the story, which we all hate. The potential embarrassment. Oh my god, imagine what that was like for Lewis to be alone, completely in a different country, not being able to speak the language, and he's feeling embarrassed because everyone is behind him queuing. That's an example of stakes which aren't dinosaurs. 2. Where the bloody hell do you begin your story? As you can see from the photo, you begin with momentum. Start with action, in other words. Last week I was running. It's December of 2019 and I'm sat on a coach. Around 3 weeks ago I was sat in an empty cafe waiting for my date to arrive. The best way to plunge people's attention straight into your story is to start with forward momentum. Remember, you're taking them on a journey with your words, so you need to take them to a direction which they don't know about yet, but you know about. I'm going to show you a graphic in a minute which really highlights this. Start with momentum. All the best films do this. This is from Jaws. She's getting attacked by a shark under the water. She's not secretly flooding herself off under the water. Start with momentum. Start with a forward moving action aimed at a destination, because this gets the audience going. All movies do this, absolutely all of them. You'll never see a movie start from a static place. Sometimes they will, but the best movies which really captivate our attention straight away are ones which start with momentum. The beginning and the 5-second moment. So now we understand that the most important aspect of a story is your 5-second moment. So that little tiny segment of realization, I thought this, but now I think this. The way to begin is to flip your 5-second moment and start in the opposite direction of the 5-second moment. So you need to start as close as you can to the 5-second moment as well, and you need to do so by removing as many extra details as you possibly can. For example, if something happened to you on a particular day in the evening, maybe you could start your story at the beginning of that day. I'm going to show you an example in a second, but 5-second moment, figure out what that is first before you do anything else with your story, and then your beginning is the opposite of that 5-second moment, because remember, you need to take the audience on a journey towards the 5-second moment, which they don't know about yet. Right. Quick example, in my favourite video I've ever uploaded, you are one conversation away from a completely different life. Look at the views in Tenerife, that was an awesome time. My 5-second moment within that story was me approaching a random lovely dread-headed Colombian man in Amsterdam, a complete stranger, and having a 3-hour conversation with him. So my beginning had to be the opposite of that 5-second moment, which was me beginning that day and walking the streets feeling lonely. Because you have to understand that the reason why you could stop this video right now, having known this information about the 5-second moment and starting with momentum and where to begin your story and still tell a better story than pretty much 99% of people, is because of contrast. Because you're taking the audience on a journey towards the 5-second moment, you need to start in a place which is directly in contrast with that 5-second moment. For when you reveal the 5-second moment, it has excitement and resonance and meaning. The reason why I said I'm about to ruin every book and film for you is because whenever you watch a film or read a book, you can guarantee that whatever is happening early on in that story, the opposite is going to happen later on, and that will be the 5-second moment. A little tip as well, to make your beginning even greater, make the audience laugh within the first 30 seconds of you opening your mouth telling the story. Because this does 3 things, really key things. 1, it shows you have the floor, which means you have authority to speak and actually grab the mic or take space within the room to tell the story. 2, it shows you're a good storyteller. There's a weird psychological thing where if you're able to make people laugh, people just assume that you're good at what you're doing. And number 3, it shows whatever bad thing happened to you in the story, you're fine now. Now we're into the middle part of your story, and we're going to cover 3 key techniques that you can use to make your story killer. It's called backpacks, crystal balls, and camo bombs. That was the best photo I could find of a camouflage bomb on Google. Brilliant. And we got crystal ball in the middle. Share your plan, then derail it. Smithers. Love that photo. Think, why do heist movies always share the characters' plans? Any idea? It's obvious when you find out, which I'm going to explain in a second. You want to state an assumption, then falsify it. Now I reached my goal, I could relax. But then, you need to hint at an upcoming event, then reveal something completely unexpected. In the story we're going to get into as an example later on, there is a sentence that Matthew Dix mentions that is a brilliant explanation of stating an assumption, then falsifying it. I turned around and saw my McDonald's shirt on the back seat. Then I knew what I had to do. What? What the audience is thinking. Knock on people's doors and ask for donations to the Ronald McDonald charity. Completely threw a curveball in there that we wouldn't have expected. This is the graphic I wanted to show you that is really good, that depicts how you are taking people on a journey towards a direction they don't know but you have set within the story. You're drawing it for them with your words. You're guiding them. You're leading them to a place that they don't know but you know. Hence why I love this photo so much. It's because as the storyteller, you know what you're doing and you know where you're taking them, but you have to gradually guide people there in order for it to be more rewarding. Okay, the audience wants you to succeed in the end, but they want suffering first. They might not say this explicitly, of course, if you asked an audience member, but they want to suffer before they see you succeed. Crystal ball is a false prediction set by the storyteller that causes the audience to wonder if it will be true. I think I have an example on the next one. Yes, for example, there is a video I uploaded, you can see me double time on the screen now, titled "Whatever Scares You, Go Do It." Now the 5-second moment within that story was me turning down a public speaking opportunity because I was too nervous to do it at the age of 18. The crystal ball I threw in very purposefully at the beginning of the story was me giving it the big un about my charisma and confidence. I was talking about, I just came back from travelling, I felt like I could talk to people, started going to this public speaking workshop called Toastmasters, and I was, feeling really confident in myself, giving like 1-minute speeches, until I got asked to actually do a speech and lead the evening, and I was like, no, I don't want to do it yet, I'm not ready. So the crystal ball, you could argue, was planted there to make the audience ponder, he's giving it the big one about his charisma and confidence. Is that going to hold up to be true in the future? I set something up, I set an assumption, and then I derailed it by saying no to the public speaking opportunity because I was too nervous. Let's get into the next technique, the backpack technique. This is one of my favourites. The backpack technique is when you put a backpack, figuratively speaking, on the audience. To go back to the question I proposed earlier about when you see a film where a heist is involved, why does the director always share the plans of the heist with the audience? For example, in Ocean's 11, which is a film where they rob banks and they always plan heists within the film, all heists in the plan of the film are fully outlined, because this ensures the audience knows exactly what the storyteller is aiming at and will feel the same level of frustration and angst when it's not achieved. Remember, when you're telling the story, imagine your audience like with your every word rising with the level of suspense that you create, and then, oh my god, we know what plan is, or will this plan come to fruition? And then when the plan is derailed, because they were enlightened about your plan, because you told it through the use of crystal balls, backpacks and camouflage bombs, which we'll get into in a second, they know exactly when your plan has been derailed, and it sets them into a state of disorientation. But again, Smithers photo, you know where you're leading them, so share your plan and then derail it. The hourglass technique is another technique in which you find the moment in your story that everyone has been waiting for. The audience are on their seats waiting for you to reveal. Then in a very sadistic way, you flip that hourglass on its head and you let the sand run. For example, in this video, the same one titled "Whatever Scares You, Go Do It," where I was talking about my confidence and then rejecting the opportunity to do a public speaking gig, it's 7 minutes long. It could have been 2 minutes long. I made it a 7-minute long video on purpose, so I added seemingly insignificant details in there to build a level of suspense. Imagine if you clicked on a YouTube video and instead of someone actually going into a decent background story to build rapport between you and him, he just said, oh yeah, basically this thing happened and 30 seconds over, boom, done. No, it's by means of the hourglass technique that we can add seemingly insignificant details which disguise what we're aiming to reveal later on in the story. Hope that makes sense. So when in doubt, add more details in order to disguise the moment that you're going to reveal and the audience wants you to reveal. Another example of the hourglass technique is Jurassic Park. Again, mention seemingly insignificant things to create suspense, then reveal the big moment. The big moment, like I said in Jurassic Park, is the 5-second moment where this character realises that he actually likes kids. The dinosaurs, the other character plots, the little ongoings between everything else in the film are just details to cover around the 5-second moment to give you some suspense. So it's not just a 5-second moment of that main character coming on screen in the cinema and saying, oh, by the way, just to save you 2 hours, this character used to hate kids, but then he had a realization that he likes kids, and that's it. Always make people laugh before they cry, because it hurts way more that way. Again, contrast. Camo bombs. Let's get into this technique. A camouflaged bomb is when you plant a detail in the story which will then explode later on, and you can disguise camouflaged bombs with a laugh. A brilliant example of this is a film called Shutter Island with Leonardo DiCaprio. Don't know if you've ever seen the film, but essentially, I'm not going to spoil it for you. It is an incredible work of psychological camouflaged bombs, whereby when you watch it for the first time, when the 5-second moment is revealed and the ending is revealed, it's like, oh my god. It's one of those reactions because there are numerous camouflaged bombs which are planted early on during the film which all explode later on, to the extent where when you finish watching the film, when you watch it again, you then notice everything. You know how you watch a film a second time and you're like, oh, I never noticed that the first time. Yes, because you listening to a story the first time, you're going to be completely unaware of the camouflage bombs that the director is planting in there, which set off later on to give you that feeling of, oh my god. For example, story from me, what does this look like? There was a story I uploaded recently where I was in Slovenia in 2018 and I was having a really good night in a hostel. And I made some new friends, and we decided to carry on our evening outside of the hostel down to a pub. And we went into this pub and there were 5 huge jacked Albanian guys as soon as we walked in. And I mentioned that 30 seconds in the story, which takes about 7 minutes to explain, for a reason, because it's a camouflage bomb that's going to go off later on. Essentially, a fight broke out between me and some of the people I was hanging around with, the Albanians. You know, no one was severely hurt. But by mentioning the Albanians that they were there, and I played it off by saying, oh, I saw them as soon as I walked in and said, oh, I'm in travelling mode, right lads, and they said hello back, it seemed insignificant. Almost as if you could say, why, he's talking about being on a night out with people he's just met, why would he mention these random Albanians as he's walked into the pub? It's because they were going to explode, literally, later on. How to end your story. Oof. Now you can see 2 examples of Sleeping Beauty on the left, don't want to go for that ending, and satisfyingly sad endings on the right. Ding! That's what we want to aim for. Ready? The best stories have messy endings. End your story with heart, not with a joke, pun, or play on words. We listen to stories to be moved. Remember the V word, vulnerability. That is how people are going to connect with your story. Vulnerability is scary because, you know, people could mistreat us with our vulnerability, but you cannot tell stories without being vulnerable. You have to express the courage to be vulnerable. For a story to be remembered, end in a place that is moving, vulnerable or revealing. Then it establishes connection. What this might look like is, let's say you're telling a story about how you realise the importance of one of your friends for you, and you could end it with heart on a sentence like, and it was in that moment I realised I had a friend for life. When we get into the cardinal sins of storytelling, I'm going to highlight how you can use this in more detail by showing you what not to do with ending a story. Okay? Humour and when to use it. Many people get confused with humour mainly because they don't understand that it's actually a process that you can follow. There's a method to the madness, like I said. Comedians, however, they want to be funny. Storytellers want to be remembered. And when we tell a story, we can non-intentionally include humour without really trying to be humorous, which I'll explain. There are two ways that you can include humour in your story. One is milk cans and baseballs, and then the second is babies and blenders. So milk cans and baseballs is a technique you can use whereby you build suspense through including seemingly insignificant details to then knock them down with humour. An example of this is a story I have which opened something like this. It's December of 2023 and I'm sat on a beach by a fire. I'm looking around at everyone else on this beach and wondering why they're all naked. Oh, I'm on a hippie beach. That's why. That might not have been really funny, but that is just a quick example of how you can set something up with milk cans and then to throw it down with a little bit of humour. Why is everyone naked on this beach? Perhaps that sparked the thought in the audience's mind of, oh, where is he? Like, what's he doing? Why would he be on a beach where everyone's naked? Hippie beach? Ah, of course. That makes a lot of sense. Babies and blenders, sounds a bit weird. This is where you include two things together which shouldn't be together. For example, let's say you're telling a story where you involve a description of a kid who's very violent. You could say, the kid was waving his pencil around like an AK-47. Take things which are the complete opposites and put them together and they will be funny. Specificity is also really funny. A good example of this is, I'm pouring milk over a bowl of bran flakes, rather than I'm pouring milk over a bowl of cereal. Bonus techniques. Take your story from good to great. I've said it already that you could stop this guide after having learned about the 5-second moment and where to begin your story, but I'm going to use that psychological sentence one more time. You could stop this guide with what I'm about to share with you next, and you will not just become a great storyteller, you will become a double XP 2105 master storyteller. Replace and for the word but and therefore. Mic drop. Because this adds energy and excitement rather than a dull trip down memory lane. I'm going to show you an example of this in a second, which will really highlight this for you. The word therefore also can be interchangeably used for so, because therefore is a bit more formal than so. Add location to every scene as well that you possibly can, because you want it to appear as cinema in the audience's mind. That feeling when you're telling a story and people are like, oh my god man, when you were telling that, I felt like I was there with you. That is because you're adding location to every scene so people can visually imagine it in their mind, and again, it makes your story more enticing. Here are two examples we're going to go through of the same story, but in this one, I've replaced every single word of but and so for the word and in the next one I'm going to show you the difference when we include so and but, just to show you the level of intensity with either going down memory lane or having an enticing story. Right, this is the example of just using the word and instead of but and so. Either listen to this without watching or watch and listen. It's June of 2020 and I'm in a car with my girlfriend at the time driving towards a food market. It's a warm sunny day in Krakow, Poland, and the COVID restrictions have just loosened up a bit and it's time to test all of the Polish I've been learning alone in my room for the last 2 months. We moved to Poland at the beginning of 2020 and I made a promise to myself I'd try and learn Polish, and discovering that it takes on average 16 years for non-Slavic speakers to learn it fluently on my first walking tour wasn't enough to sway me against learning it. And I'm silent for the whole 20-minute car journey because I'm too busy repeating the Polish phrases I've been learning in my head. Dzień dobry, czy mogę prosić 5 jabłko? My girlfriend is happy as we're spending time together as we drive to the market, and I feel nervous. I can feel the social anxiety creep in the closer we get to the market, which we'd been to before, and I'd let my girlfriend order everything because she's Polish and it's just easier. And this time, I want to reclaim my manhood and assert my independence. If I can order one thing, I know my girlfriend will be proud of me and the confidence I'll feel will be incredible, I think, as I begin to meditate on the approaching victory. And we pass the market in the car and drive around the corner to park. As my girlfriend pulls the handbrake up, I feel my hands sweat and my throat dry up as I turn to my right and see the market. It's as busy as it could possibly be, and because the market is around 20 minutes outside of the city, there's no way in hell that people speak English here, and I'm going to stick out like a sore thumb as the only foreigner. And I'm not going to be a foreigner today, because I'm going to try and order in Polish. And we get out of the car and walk around the market, lost in the sea of people and vibrant fruit and vegetables of all different colours. How boring was that, just with the use of and? Now, exactly the same thing, but for but and so. It's June of 2020 and I'm in a car with my girlfriend at the time driving towards a food market. It's a warm sunny day in Krakow, Poland, and the COVID restrictions have just loosened up a bit, so it's time to test all of the Polish I've been learning alone in my room for the past 2 months. We moved to Poland at the beginning of 2020 and I made a promise to myself I'd try and learn Polish, and discovering that it takes on average 16 years for non-Slavic speakers to learn it fluently on my first walking tour wasn't enough to sway me against learning it. So I'm silent for the whole 20-minute car journey because I'm too busy repeating the Polish phrases I've been learning in my head. Dzień dobry, czy mogę prosić 5 jabłko? My girlfriend is happy we're spending time together as we drive to the market, but I feel nervous. I can feel the social anxiety creep in the closer we get to the market, which we'd been to before, but I'd let my girlfriend order everything because she's Polish and it's just easier. But this time, I want to reclaim my manhood and assert my independence. If I can order one thing, I know my girlfriend will be proud of me and the confidence I'll feel will be incredible, I think, as I begin to meditate on the approaching victory. So we pass the market in the car and drive around the corner to park. As my girlfriend pulls the handbrake up, I feel my hands sweat and my throat dry up as I turn to my right and see the market. It's as busy as it could possibly be, and because the market is around 20 minutes outside of the city, there's no way in hell that people speak English here, so I'm going to stick out like a sore thumb as I'm the only foreigner, but I'm not going to be a foreigner today, because I'm going to try and order in Polish. So we get out of the car and walk around the market, lost in the sea of people and vibrant fruits and vegetables of all different colours. Bring me back to the centre. Hopefully you noticed in the second example with the inclusions of the words buts and so, there was more excitement and there was more flow and there was more energy in the story, rather than it being a boring trip down memory lane. I did this last weekend and then I went there and then I did this and then I went there and then I spoke to him. Ugh. Humour is optional. Stakes, however, are non-negotiable. Remember that stakes are the risks that you include, the danger of the situation, the seriousness of it, and the potential for failure all included in your story. That's what makes it exciting. Note, the longer you speak, the more articulate and captivating you have to be. So talk less and make brevity your gift when you can. When it comes to descriptions of things, again upon the idea of including the word but in your sentences, the negative description always trumps the positive. For example, I'm dumb, ugly and annoying is much worse and less better descriptive than I'm not smart, I'm not good looking, I'm not kind, because what the latter examples do is they contain a but, which shows that they could potentially be proved wrong later on in your story. Remember, what you're setting yourself up for in your story is contrast when the 5-second moment happens between the 5-second moment and the beginning of your story. These green examples entertain both possibilities. Another bad example, I was lost. Heather was my ex-girlfriend. I was penniless. Better would be, I couldn't find my way home. Heather was no longer my girlfriend. I didn't have a lot of money. Again, because they show the potential for these statements to be proven otherwise. A valid question when it comes to storytelling is, can I tell a story about someone who isn't in my life anymore, or who wronged me, maybe an ex-partner, or someone you don't have the best relationship with now? Absolutely. To quote Matthew Dix, you own everything that happened to you. Tell your stories. If people wanted you to write warmly about them, they should have behaved better. Oh, we are here, we have arrived, the cardinal sins of storytelling. Do not do these. I repeat, do not do these. Do not tell someone else's story. If you're going to tell someone else's story, tell it from your perspective. I remember when I was learning about all of these techniques and I learned the cardinal sins of storytelling, a friend of mine told a story where he basically told someone else's story, and it was the first time I ever listened to someone. I wanted to stop him and say, why the hell are you telling someone else's story who you had no involvement in? As the listener, how do you expect me to resonate with what you're saying? Obviously he didn't know, but yeah, if you're going to tell someone else's story, tell it from your perspective and the effect that it had on you and how you saw it from your eyes. Be very, very careful of ambulance stories. These are stories which are about near-death experiences and really extreme things that happen to you which are out of the scope of normal everyday life. They're likely to spark a, oh my god, wow, can't believe that happened response in the audience, but in terms of relatability, no one's going to be able to relate to your story of backflipping 3 times off a rock and then landing on an eagle which carried you into the Atlantic Ocean and then dropped you off back home, because no one had that story happen to them before. Telling a story, however, about an everyday aspect of life that we all experience, like relationship issues or putting your trousers on in the morning, is likely to be much more relatable. Do not interrupt your story with narration. For example, the thing you have to understand about my life at this point is you never see movies do this. You never see a movie stop and then explain what's going on just quickly to let you know. Some movies do, but not the best ones. Instead, you want to include the description you wanted the audience to know within your story. Incorporate it in the flow of what you're saying. More things. When telling a big story, it cannot be about anything big. You have to find the small, inconsequential, seemingly trivial moment that the audience can resonate with in your story. Remember, don't tell ambulance stories. Every now and then you can, but more often than not, don't tell them. Never practice telling your story in front of a mirror. Think, when you're telling your story and when you're talking to people, you're not going to be looking at yourself. So instead, practice in front of other people or in front of a picture of someone. I said it at the beginning and I highlighted that it was a cardinal sin, just because I was explaining an example. Never say phrases like, long story short, because while you're telling the story. It's the worst thing you can possibly do, because it reminds your audience that you're telling a story. Remember, you want them to get completely lost in your words and the journey that you're taking them on. And when you say things like, basically, long story short, just to wrap this up, it switches them off of story, absorbing, having fun mode and straight into, oh, this guy's telling a story about something that happened to him. Never do an accent. Just don't do it, because again, it creates the feeling of snapping the people out of the fact you're telling a story. You'll never be able to recreate that person's accent as best as you can. The only time you can do an accent during a story, I would say, is if it's a family member. Those inclusions of accents usually come across as quite well in a story because you have a personal connection with that person, but anyone else, do not impersonate their accent. Never compare someone in your story to a celebrity. For example, you might be saying, oh, this guy's arms were bigger than Mark Wahlberg's, but for the one person in your audience who has no idea who Mark Wahlberg is, it's just going to fly straight over their head and the story will be lost on them. So never include descriptions of things or people based on things or people that people might not know. People can always tell when you're reciting a story as well. Now, when it comes to making YouTube videos, most of my stories are scripted, admittedly so. However, I wouldn't recite a story to tell it in person, because you want to capture an air of authenticity within what you're saying. That's the way it will resonate the most. With YouTube videos, it's fine. Script them, because that's the nature of the game. But face to face, don't recite. Few more cardinal sins. Do not set expectations for your story. You know how people grab you and they're like, oh, mate, you got to listen to this story. It's going to be so funny. Oh my God, you won't believe what happened to me the other day. Or, oh my God, you need to listen to this. What they're doing is they're setting the bar so high for them before they've even told the story, which removes all levels of surprise. As soon as someone says, oh my God, you're going to find this so funny, you're going to look for every reason to not find it funny. And worse yet, you know something funny is coming, so it doesn't hit you off guard, and again, just like I said, removes all surprise. Don't add too many locations in your story, because remember, people only have a certain amount of cognitive load they can handle, which is basically images they can store in their mind. Don't swear a lot in your story. It sometimes takes away the descriptive power that you have with your words. Don't use props either. You don't want to use anything that is fantastical or outlandish. You just want to master your ability to take people on a journey with your words and to have them resonate with something that happened to you. Don't use props. Here's a low-stake way of improving your storytelling with improvisation. You can do this on a first date. You can do this with people you already know, with your friends. It's absolutely awesome and very fun and simple to do. It's called first, last, best, worst. So using the prompts of those 4 words, tell an improvised story about a particular event. So let's say you're on a date with someone and you reach a point in the conversation where, conversation's died down a bit, but you've managed to learn a little bit more about each other and you feel comfortable. You could frame the conversation by saying, let's play a little game. I have a storytelling game if you want to play it. And she says, yeah. Or he says, yeah, absolutely up for it. Pick a scenario. So, for example, first kiss or first job. Then you essentially take it in turns to tell your first, last, best and worst experience of that scenario. So your first kiss, your last kiss, your best kiss and your worst kiss. You can just outline the experience or describe it in a storytelling manner as you become a master storyteller. And you'll knock her bandy, mate, which means you'll impress her in Cockney slang. Homework for life. Matthew Dix has a brilliant exercise that you can use every single day to capture the seemingly insignificant moments that happen throughout your day. Think, at the end of every day, as benign and boring and inconsequential as it might seem, what was the most story-worthy moment from my day? There's an element of life where you have to live life and you have to be engaged in life in order to collect stories to then relay and tell to other people. So you can do this by just reflecting on your day. At the end, just have a little notepad where you collect your stories and just write the 5-second moment and maybe a little bit of an outline of what actually happened. So if you're making a YouTube video, you can then tell that, or it's fresh in your mind the next time you have an example situation where you can recall that story, that little thing that happened to you, to mind. I don't do this every day, but I had a solid week after reading the book where I actually started to experience a lot of gratitude for small things that were happening in my life, because again, it's the small things that allow people to resonate with what we're talking about. Part 10. Telling a story in public. On the odd chance that you might be talking in front of a group, or you might be invited up on stage, either in a business setting or in any setting you might find yourself in, here's how to master telling a story in public. Barack, what are you saying, my G? First of all, you have to understand that nervousness is a brilliant connector. A lot of the time when we feel called upon socially to tell a story in front of people, we think that we have to exude every ounce of confidence we have. You don't. The best way for people to connect with you is through nervousness. There is a reason, besides the fact that I actually felt nervous before recording this video, that I mentioned it to you. Because hopefully it allowed you to resonate with me and think, oh, this is a human being behind the camera. Lewis feels nervous just like I do. Therefore, I can connect with him a little bit better. Show the audience you are just like them. In the UK, we have a tradition in weddings where you give a best man speech. So the man who's getting married, his best friend or his brother, gives a speech which is typically known to be very funny. And the only wedding I've been to in my life, the best man who gave the speech was visibly very nervous before he stood up and took the microphone to hand and gave his best man speech. And the first thing he said when he grabbed the microphone is he said, I'm absolutely crapping myself, which means I'm very nervous. Everyone in the room laughed and the tension was relieved not only from him but from ourselves, where we were suddenly rooting for him because we saw there's another nervous human being. I get nervous as well. I'm going to support him. With regards to memorization, again, you don't want to recite your story where it becomes monotonous and word for word, but you do want to remember some things. Therefore, memorize the first few sentences, so in your beginning, the last few sentences, and the scenes of location as well, and then the 5-second moment. If you just memorize those 4 things, so first few sentences, last few sentences, the 5-second moment, and the scenes in your story, you will be able to have enough improvisation around those parts, but enough structure as well. When you're giving a speech in front of no matter how many people, find one person to your left, find one person to your right, and find one person in the middle who you can look at and hold eye contact with. Do not talk to the group. Talk to people individually, and it will give you the opportunity to forget that there's loads of people in front of you, and you can just have an almost one-on-one conversation with one person on the left, in the middle, and on the right as well. Find those people. If you're speaking in a group, to counter what I just said about nervousness, you do have an obligation to be entertaining, because Remember, people are giving you their time and attention, so it is your duty to be captivating and enticing. But hopefully you've done that in the training room by developing your story into a killer one. Vulnerability through storytelling shows that you are safe to talk to and resonate with. Yeah, you're stealing people's time, so make it worth it. Speaking of which, we're at the end. So the way we're going to spend these last 6 minutes of this full guide is I have a story for you to watch and listen to. This is going to bring everything that we've just covered together so you can see it in action from a master. This is a video from Matthew Dix, who, like I said, is my mentor for telling stories. He taught me everything that I've just covered with you, and he wrote the book Storyworthy. This is a story titled Charity Thief, and what I want you to do is watch the video, and I'm going to add text by the side of the video so you can see things that I want you to pay attention to, and I'm going to be noting all of the different techniques that he's using so you can see them in action. And then I'll let you go, because I've taken up a lot of your time today, which I'm very appreciative for. So let's get into it.
Please give a warm welcome, very super warm welcome to Matthew Dix. Come on up, Matthew. Yeah.
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you. Shut up. It's 1991 and I'm 20 years old, and I'm driving home from the very first booty call of my entire life, and I am excited because I don't know that this is going to also be the very last booty call of my entire life. And then it's in that moment of excitement that the right front tire of my 1976 Chevy Malibu blows out. But it doesn't deflate, it disintegrates. It throws rubber on the road in a way that I didn't think was possible. And it takes everything I can to get the car over to the shoulder and to a stop. And it's 1991. I don't have a cell phone, so I do the only thing I can. I start hiking up the road to look for help. 7 hours later, after giving all of my money to a half-naked mountain man named Winston, I have a bald tire on my car and I'm heading home when I look at the instrument panel and I see that I have no gas. And all of the money that I have is in Winston's hand. And it's 1991. I don't have a credit card. I don't have an ATM card. I don't even have a checking account. And so I take the next exit and I roll my car into a Getty station. And as I park the car, I'm angry and I'm sad. I'm 20 years old. I'm a McDonald's manager. I make $7.25 an hour, and I'm the richest person I know. My mother is living on welfare with my sister. My father's left 10 years ago, and the only friend that I have who even has a credit card or a car that can make this 100-mile trip to New Hampshire is off on some college weekend, and I can't get in touch with him. And this was not the plan for my life. I was not supposed to be this alone. And so I go into the Getty station to beg for gas. $8 worth of gas is all I need because it's 1991 and gas is 85 cents a gallon. And the kid behind the counter will not give it to me. He doesn't want to lose his job, and I offer everything, and he says no. So I go back to my car. My plan is to wait for the next shift change. Maybe someone more sympathetic will take over. But as I climb into my car, I see my McDonald's uniform crumpled in the back, and I have an idea. An hour later, I'm in a residential neighborhood about a mile from the Getty station. I'm on the porch of a red brick house, and I'm knocking on the door. I'm wearing my McDonald's uniform, the blue shirt, the blue pants, the blue tie. The door opens, and there's a man standing in front of me, and I know at that moment that this is a bad idea. But it's 3 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon, and I'm on his porch in a McDonald's uniform, and the only way to get off is to go forward. So I say to him, "My name is Matt. I'm collecting money for the Ronald McDonald Children's Charities. Can you please make a donation?" And this man stares at me like Stonehenge. He does not move. He's 50, but he might as well be 500. He has all of the wisdom and knowledge of the world wrapped into one man, and I know he knows I'm lying. And the next words that come out of my mouth, I don't expect. I say, "My mom died of cancer when I was young. And my sister has cancer now, and I'm just trying to do what I can to help." And he looks at me and points and says, "You stay right there." And he goes back into the house and closes the door. And I know that he's calling the police. And I'm going to get arrested for stealing money from McDonald's, which ironically 2 years later will actually happen. But not on this day. Because he comes back to the door and he has $20 in his hand, which is like $20,000 to me on this day. And he presses it into my palm and I say, "No, that's too much." And he says to me, "My wife died of cancer 5 years ago." And I think this is a really bad idea I had. And before I know it, I am sitting on the porch with this man, and he asks me about my mother died of, and I say breast cancer because it's the first one that pops to my mind. And he says, "What does your sister have?" And I say leukemia, which I don't actually know is a cancer, but I know kids get it. And he tells me that his wife, Lisa, died of lung cancer, and that his kids live on the West Coast. And he tells me how she struggled for 2 years and how he wanted to tell her it was okay to go, but he couldn't, and how badly he felt that he watched her struggle for so long. And I sat on that porch and I listened to him and I prayed he wouldn't ask me anything. And I just wanted to get off. And so finally we were hugging and I was walking down the walk with $20 in my hand and it felt like poison. I got to my car and I sat in there and I remembered how lonely I felt. And then I felt so stupid and small because I knew at that moment I didn't understand real loneliness. I was a 20-year-old kid with friends and I was stuck in New Hampshire. But I had walked away from a man who was in a tiny house with a wife that was gone and the kids that were gone. And he had a loneliness in him that I would never understand. And so I put the gas in my car and I drove home. But he has always been with me. I have never left that man on that porch that day. And I'm hopeful that I'll never be as lonely as he was that day. Thank you.
All that's left to say is I appreciate you more than you know. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I really appreciate if you made it this far in the video. I hope it was worth it because this was the first full guide I did. Share your stories in the comments using all of the techniques that we've covered today, and the best story I will pin as the top comment under this video. Best way to support the channel is to hit like and subscribe. With that being said, if you have any questions, hit me up in the comments. An hour and 12 minutes or however long it's been. I'll see you soon. Adios, muchachos.